Well, good morning, everybody. Here we are again, time for our morning devotional. I'm doing it inside this morning because it's still dark out there. Probably going to be getting kind of an early start today, so I may not have any daylight to sit outside and do this. But if you look behind me, you see something that might be interesting. That's a mosquito net. Uh, that's a necessary thing in these parts of the world, as both mosquitoes and malaria are rampant, unfortunately, in this part of the world. But so far, I haven't been so bad. I wear those little citronella wristbands, and that seems to do the trick. So haven't had to deploy the mosquito net yet, but there it is if I ever need it. But our morning devotional this morning is going to be entitled "A Not New Message," and our devotional verse is 1 John chapter 3, First John chapter 3, verse 11. For this is the message that you have heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. You know, I remember a long time ago, years ago, as a matter of fact, my daughter came home from school, and she was just really excited. And she was so excited she thought she was going to bust, because we shared a common interest in music, and we actually liked quite a bit of the same music. And she'd heard a new group that had really gotten her excited. It was really quite funny because as it was turned out, it was a group that had released one of my favorite albums way back in 1980 when I graduated high school. And here they were releasing an album again in the year 2000. The act wasn't new at all. They just happened to have amazing longevity. At one time, Jesus did tell his disciples that he was going to give them a new commandment, to love one another. And we know that wasn't new. Jesus didn't give a new commandment. He just made the commandment that had been with us forever more demanding and more precise. His instruction was that we were to love others in an entirely new way, that we were to love them sacrificially. In other words, the way that he loved us. And in our devotional verse today, Jesus pointed out that the commandment to love one another was nothing new. We learned that way back in the law in Deuteronomy 6:5 and Leviticus 19:18. Ironically, those were the very verses the Pharisees had twisted around, and we're even now teaching it has been written, hate your enemies, when we know, in fact, that was never written, and God never told us to hate anybody. One of the biggest issues God had with the Pharisees was their hearts, which were as cold as ice to God and to each other. Friends, the commandment to love others has been around since God first gave men messages to deliver to the rest of us. The ones we just discussed from the Old Testament were given to Moses, who passed them on to the people and then wrote them down for us. People try to use Old Testament scriptures to find loopholes. Like the Pharisees, it has been said, when nothing of the sort was ever said. We like to toss around scriptures such as eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth, to justify our desire for personal vengeance against others, when that law never meant that. Love has always been God's plan and God's command, and he sent Jesus to live with us to show us how to do it right. Are we watching and learning? Have a great day in the Lord, my friends.